You are very welcome back to the show. Now, were you ever told to put a sock in it, or perhaps you were called a bigwig?
Well, if you ever wonder what those phrases actually meant, we are going to share with you today because Shane Lahan, folklorist, is here and he's going to let the cat out of the bag. That's one. I mean, you'd hear that when you were growing up, stuff like that. My dad.
Yeah.
That's what does that mean? Actually,
Well, I'll tell you about the cat in the bag, but let me tell you, I'm fascinated by this. You know, I began thinking about all this way back. My late father, Ty, he was an artist. He used to do cartoons, would you believe it or not. He used to write a little piece on the paper, on the Echo, every night for about 20 years.
Wow.
And he had all these lovely
he's good.
things. And what he would do is that he would collect old phrases, old idioms. He'd always be going around with a piece of paper. This was his book. I brought this book in as well. This is Brewer's Dictionary of Phrase and Fable. And inside in Tyke's book here, he has all little pieces marked, you know, all little pieces. So I inherited those, and his book that he used to bring out was called Wise and Otherwise. And I think that's almost what I've been doing all my life is building on his ideas, picking out the bit of intelligence, if you like, that was in something.
That's a lovely photo of the two of you, Shane.
And I was very young when my dad passed away, so it's a real honour for me to be for him to think about him and to continue all of those. So the cat out of the bag. I love this. You know, these phrases, we use these phrases all the time. Believe it or not, long ago when people used to be going to markets, you know, the sow would have the bonnets very often. You might have anything up to 11 or 12 small little piglets. You couldn't carry those into market. They used to put them into an old flour bag or thing like that. Yeah. And a cute fella, he might throw in an old cat that he found at the side of the road, right? And he might sell off a dozen bonnets to a fella. And of course, when they opened the bag, wasn't the cat out of the bag.
So that's where it comes from.
But there's a more sinister one than that. And Padraig Walsh, one of my lovely students, he was giving a tour the other day, and I learned from my students, which is great. And he told us that the cat was originally, of course, the cat of 9 tails, the whip that was there in the past. And what happened is it was always held in a bag because of the different parts. The bag was always red, and of course it was red from blood, would you think, okay? And the other expression is you wouldn't have room to swing a cat. Yeah. And that's not your pussycat that you're throwing around in the air. That's actually the cat, the whip that's there. So the cat is out of the bag. Or has the cat got your tongue?
Yeah.
That's because when you got lashed that time, and people did when they were in the Navy, when they were in the Army, all of that, you'd be afraid to speak up against it.
I had no idea to swing a cat. I had no idea that was a whip. I had no idea.
So all of those come back. There's so many interesting ones that are in there. And I love as well, I often go to graveyards with my students, you know. We do a lot of recording of headstones and so on. And my great friend John Tierney was telling us a great phrase, the stinking rich. I was saying, where did the stinking rich come from? Well, what happened, of course, is that sometimes you had these graves. We were the dirt poor, we were under the ground, but the stinking rich were above the ground in the tombs, the altar tombs like you see here. And of course, what happened is their bodies would decompose and they were smelling much more than, of course, we were.
Way.
So
I had no idea about that.
Stinking rich in that sense. So all of these phrases, they always had a little story, a little background.
But they had a meaning too. That was the thing.
They did. I love the one that I'll be watching you now when you're out on the roads. We're looking at you today. You're always dressed to the nines. Dressed to the nines of good. Or you often hear someone saying, "We'll go the whole 9 yards."
Yeah.
Well, seemingly, when you wanted to make a proper suit of clothes in the past, you needed 9 yards of material to get the lining right, to get everything
cut right.
When somebody was cut right and had
the whole 9 yards.
No kind of patch in it or anything, was the whole 9 yards. Often people think as well that the 9 yards had to do with the ammunition during World War II. When you were firing off, there was 9 yards of ammunition. So these all have these unusual origins and phrases to them.
Unbelievable. What about bigwigs? Did we mention that one?
Yeah, the bigwig, of course, was that when you went to the court and you met the fellow who was up in the court who was going to make the judgment. He had a big wig up on top of them. Okay, so any of the authority, any of those guys, they were the bigwigs. So you'd use that term quite a lot. But I love as well some of the Irish words that we have, like. I love the distinction between the Jackeens was a word that we always used.
Oh, for Dublin people.
The Dublin people. And I was looking at this, you know, and you'll remember now when in the 1970s with Kerry in Dublin, the Jacks are back and so on. But the Jackeen was someone who was loyal to the Union Jack.
Yeah.
And they were the people in Dublin.
In the Pale.
In the Pale, as it were. And they were opposite to the Culchies, if you like. And the word Culchie, of course, there's a whole derivation. So the Jackeen, and a Jackeen was also a Shawneen, like as in Shawneen.
Shawneen,
So they were, it was a derogatory term that the Culchies had for the people in the Pale. And likewise, the Culchies, of course, were the Coolantee. the people who came in the back door.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
They were the people who wouldn't come in the front door. They'd
Like
come
the
in.
serfs,
they would-
nearly.
they would-
Yeah.
Or the people in the Cuilta, the people who were out in the woodland. And that was like the Pale versus when Ireland was covered in wood and all
Yeah.
of those sort of things.
Oh,
And
that's interesting. I
yeah.
didn't know the culture.
the Culture,
yeah,
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 the cool,
yeah.
and of course Kilchimock has its Culture Festival as well, but they're I think hanging on to the term and they're bringing it themselves and off with them. But
Yeah.
there's another lovely one that I love, by hook or by crook.
We were discussing this on the show
not so
one
long
day.
ago, yeah.
And I just picked out one of my dad's ones here, and he's a lovely picture of Hookhead Lighthouse down on the way into Waterford and that sort of area. And what happens, of course, is that your entrance into Waterford City was either by Hookhead, the lighthouse that was there, and again just up over you at the town of Crook, as it were.
Ah, so that's
So
what
during
it is.
during the time of the Anglo-Normans coming in, Strongo was going to take Ireland by hook or by crook. Later on, in Cromwell's time, it was either by Hook Lighthouse or Crookhaven in West Cork. But in fact, to be honest, I'm not sure if any of those are accurate, because actually I brought it in to show you a fairly vicious-looking object
Yeah.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
This was a proper hook, a bill hook. And long ago, when people hadn't any wood or any fuel for their fire or anything like that, they were allowed to go into the landlord's area and they were allowed to cut down any branches that were coming out by hook or by crook, which was the longer one,
Yeah.
and they would have to make do with that as they're firing for the year. So if you got by hook or by crook,
Yeah.
that was the origin.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a fairly vicious looking one. You know?
Jeepers.
That's your own one, Shane, is it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm forever picking stuff up, Dahi. I love, and I love bits of the past, and I love tangible bits of
Yeah.
the past, because this is different, of course, to the Quran that you'd have for
For family.
Yeah, it's a thicker one.
So,
yeah.
so this is
See,
much
we-
thicker.
More of a machete type.
It is,
yoke,
like, yeah, it's
isn't
heavier.
it?
Lads, there's another one that I love as well, a phrase that we use all the time: banjaxed. you know?
Banjaxed, yeah.
Yeah.
If something was banjaxed, the car is banjaxed, or
Yeah, everything's banjaxed.
But everything's banjaxed.
Yeah.
That came back via the Urdu language, the Indian language, okay? And it's when the Munster Fusiliers and people from Ireland were in the British Army that time, serving over in India. They brought back words like pajamas and bandana and bungalow. They're all Indian Urdu words. But banjaks were the old pots, the big pots that were there, that there was a fire underneath. They were always cracking, they were always leaking,
Yeah.
they were always breaking apart, they'd explode. When something was banjaks, it was a reference to those.
So it was an
pots.
actual pot.
That's it. So to be banjaks came from that.
That
I
is-
love
Never knew that.
So they
Never knew.
brought it back from when
Yeah.
they were serving with the British Army.
That was it. The other one that I was thinking about the other day was, the way we used, there was blasphemy long ago. People used to be cursing, and you weren't allowed to curse. So we have things like gosh and golly, and
Golly,
things
What's
like
golly mean?
Yeah, like
Good
they're all
golly.
instead of God.
Yeah.
Okay, so you couldn't say oh God or oh my God, Father.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah, yeah,
golly.
gosh,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you couldn't take the Lord's name in vain. So you had Janie Mac or Jeannie Mac or
Jeannie
all
Mac.
of
Jeannie
these.
Mac, yeah,
they,
yeah.
they were all kind of ones that were there. But other curses that were there, I suppose, or other Irish ones that were there, like we use the term Aegis quite a lot
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
a mispronunciation of
Yeah.
idiot. But the one in Cork that I always love is the term langer.
Yeah.
And you called someone a langer. And that came back as well from the
song.
well, there's a song there, but it came back as well from India, from when they were out serving there. The langur monkeys that were there, they were very annoying. They'd come down, you'd be eating your food, they'd come down, they'd steal your food. So anyone who was typically annoying all the time, he'd be
As a
known
langer.
as
And
a
you know,
langer.
everyone that says the word langer here, I don't think they have any idea where that came from.
Oh yeah, it's great, isn't it? That entire sort of view of it,
That's
Yeah.
amazing, especially the langer one, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
well,
langer
Langer
monkeys.
Dan, actually, that was a horse that won in Cheltenham last week.
Yeah,
A lot of Cork people backed it, I believe it.
Do you know, there was another one, that one going the horse. There was a great old phrase long ago. I remember my father using it. It was "me old Sagosha," right?
You also go,
Yeah, someone come in, how are you, me old Sagosha? It was a really nice term. It was the name of a horse, actually, who never won anything, right? And a Sagosh that long ago was, you put your money on, you loved them, you were hoping
Yeah.
they would win, but it didn't win.
No
it
good,
was
that.
okay. A Sagosh was a saddlebag, so it was a horse that had wasn't terrific at all, you know.
Brilliant.
That's unreal.
But
Can I ask you one? Bite the bullet. Where did that
Okay.
come from?
Bite the bullet is great. You know, long ago when people were injured and so on, and they were out in the field, okay, in a war scenario and so on, they might have had to get a bullet extracted or whatever. They bit on the bullet, and some fella, we better
Yeah,
bite
yeah.
the bullet here, and they took it out in that way. So there are lovely phrases there. I love the one caught red-handed.
Yeah.
Caught red-handed is there. If you were off in the landlord's domain and you were after killing the pheasants, or if you were killing a rabbit or something like that, you'd be skinning it. And of course, if they came along, you'd throw it away. But of course, you would still have the blood on your hands, and you were caught red-handed in that way.
Just before we go, to take the biscuit.
Take the biscuit, yeah. The last thing that on the ships on go, you had the ship's biscuits, what we call old tack. It would be a hard old biscuit, you know, and it was the last thing you possibly could eat. And of course, the fellow who opened up the tin and who took the biscuit, that was the end of everything. And you say that really took the biscuit. We're in trouble now, you know.
Yes.
So that was it.
Shane Gurmila,
Shane
that's
Gurmila.
absolutely
Oh my God, we
amazing.
stay here all day talking
I'll
about these.
be every Cork person that I ever hear Langer ever from now. I'll be asking to clarify what it is, or else I'll be correcting them.
You might get a different explanation down around.
Well, I certainly know that, but I'll be correcting them. Shane Gurmila,
Thanks,
that's
Shane.
brilliant, absolutely fabulous. Now, coming up, Anne-Marie Gannon